look, it's September again. And there's actually hockey this time. That's neat. Alright, if you've been following me on Twitter, I've been saying, okay, I'll make some preseason LFRs, but these aren't really LFRs. LFRs are when the season starts. But I am talking about Leaf games, so they're kind of LFRs. And I was going to make one the morning after the Leafs' first preseason game where they beat the Flyers 4-3, and someone smashed my car. I was actually very lucky because it was in a parking lot. I wasn't actually in the car, I was in the mall, and the lady was nice enough to actually wait for me, and we exchanged information, and awesome. And then last night before bed, I'm like, I'm gonna make a video tomorrow, and I woke up like, I'm not feeling so good. Coughing, sneezing. This sweater was white when I took it out of the closet. Ew. But anyway, Leafs 1-1 through the first 2 games of the preseason. 4-3 win against Philly, 3-2 loss against Philly in the shootout. And the goaltending battle has been kind of weird so far because it's been all Reimer versus Bernier, Bernier versus Reimer. Who's going to be the #1 goalie? Meanwhile, I think in both games, the other Leaf goalie became the story. Freshly signed free agent and former second-round pick Chris Gibson came in relief of James Reimer in the 4-3 win and was pretty good. And after a very solid Leafs debut for Jonathan Bernier, stopped 15 of 16 shots, Drew McIntyre came in and was just lights out outside of the shootout. Probably should have stopped the 1 goal he let in. Didn't do so hot in the shootout, but he had at least 4 highlight reel saves in the second period. And you guys know that I'm still on the Jonathan Bernier trade, but I will say this, the Leafs have depth in goaltending, I think. I liked Reimer Scrivens. Reimer Bernier is just fine as a tandem. But then the Leafs' third goalie for a lot of last season was Jussi Rönnis, and I'm like, no. Rönnis has gone back to Europe, and now Drew McIntyre, who actually had an AHL deal last year and earned himself an NHL deal, is the Leafs' unofficial third, and probably their first call-up should Reimer or Bernier get hurt. And then behind him, it's up to Garrett Sparks and Chris Gibson to battle it out for 4th and 5th. I would put Sparks probably a little ahead of Gibson. Kadri's first goal in Game 1 was just, it was despicable. Just awesome. Nifty mittens, as they say. Pretty nice that he's under contract, eh? And I've been pretty happy with what I've seen out of most of the Leafs prospects, actually. At theleafsnation.com, we recently did a Leafs Top 20 Prospects feature, which I will put in the underbar, and you can read all 20 profiles that we came together as a team and wrote. I wrote, I think, 3 or 4 of them. We disagreed on a lot of our picks, so it wasn't unanimous. It was all a combined tally total. But the one guy that we had #1 across the board, Morgan Rielly. He's competing for a spot on the Leafs. I get this weird feeling that he's actually going to make the team or at least stick around for that few game tryout before he's sent back to junior. He hasn't wowed me, but he hasn't been bad. He hasn't stuck out as someone who doesn't belong. What do you think is going to happen with Morgan Rielly? Is he going to make the Leafs, maybe make it for the first few games and then go back to junior? Is he going to have to fill in for Cody Franzen, who might get traded? Who knows? But aside from Morgan Rielly, another guy who's just signed to the Leafs, I have no idea what's going on with him, Paul Ranger. I mean, 1 year, $1 million, hasn't played in the NHL in a few years. You'd figure he'd be a guy who's like, maybe a healthy scratch some nights, maybe not others, but he's been really good. Everyone who saw him in the AHL last year raved about him, and then in his first preseason game, laying the boom on a few guys and jumping up into the rush and scoring a goal. And the reason I bring up all these names, think of the Leafs defense right now. Dion Phaneuf, captain of the team, team's best defenseman, free agent at the end of this season, making $6.5 million right now. Carl Gunnarsson just re-signed. Mark Frazier just re-signed. Jake Gardiner injured and Marley for a lot of last year, but he played over 25 minutes in Game 2 of the preseason. He's going to have a bigger role. Paul Ranger, freshly signed, he's looking to make an impact. John Michael Lyles, say what you want about him as a player, but that contract has to go. And everyone who's like, well, just trade him. They're trying. They can't. Then there's a guy like Corbin Ian Holzer, who played on the Leafs a bunch last year in way too big of a role, but they signed him to an extension, so he's around. TJ Brennan, another new signing on D. I liked what I saw out of him in the preseason. I don't know where he's going to start the season. And then you got the potential of Morgan Rielly joining the mix. Jesse Blacker was a depth call-up last season. He never actually saw action, but he was called up to the team. Stuart Percy, 2011 first-round pick. He's making the full-time jump to pro. Will he get a call-up if there's a bunch of injuries? And unless I'm forgetting someone, please point it out if I did, Cody Franzen, who's not even signed yet. And I've seen some people be like, well, if Franzen won't sign, then you trade him for like, I don't know, something the Leafs need, like a #1 center. The whole reason they haven't signed him is they have no cap room. And some people are like, well, trade John Michael Lyles. His contract is terrible. That's why they can't trade him. No one wants it. Well, then trade Nikolai Kulemin. But I like Cooley. No. And Kuhlman's been rumored to be going to the Penguins forever, but do they really have the space, and what can they give the Leafs that makes sense? I am confused, but maybe you can help me out by answering these questions. Who do you think the Leafs' top 7 defensemen will be this season, in order, and do you think Franzen will be part of that? Say what you will about him, the Leafs' top scoring defenseman from last season, top 10 in the entire NHL among defensemen, he friggin' better be. How did you like the debut of guys like Clarkson and Bernier and Boland? Who has pleasantly surprised you, and who has kind of disappointed you? Pleasant surprise, I'm gonna go with David Brohl, actually. And you might be like, but Steve, I thought you hated goons. Well, that's the thing about him. He's called one, but I don't think he is. At theleafsnation.com, we had him ranked 20th out of our top 20. But based on what I've seen out of him in the rookie tournament and in the preseason so far, I think we were wrong. Like Colton Orr and Fraser McLaren, he fights, and that's fine. Again, no problem with fights. I have a problem with guys who fight and don't do anything else, and I'm afraid for them to have the puck. I'm not afraid when Brohl has the puck. He's pretty good, pretty responsible. You can read his prospect profile in the underbar. Someone who's disappointed me, we had him ranked top 10, Petter Granberg. People had been whispering about this guy like, oh, you know, there's an outside chance he can make the team, or he'd be a call-up. He's just, I don't know, I guess I expected more from that hype. But he's used to the big ice in Sweden, and this is like his first hockey on the little ice, and as I know from covering the KHL last season, big ice to small ice to big ice is a big transition. So let me know what you think, anything about the Leafs preseason so far, in either the comment box, or you can tweet at me at Steve_Dangle on Twitter. Tweet at me on Twitter. Yeah, that's what you do. I'm an idiot. And if you didn't know, oh, you didn't know? I have a podcast, and it's called the Steve Dangle Podcast. That's me. And it's on iTunes. And if you're like, but I don't have iTunes, I'm like, well, that's kind of weird, but you can listen to it on SoundCloud.com as well. Look up Steve Dangle Podcast, and boom, there we are. We've only been doing 1 a week so far, but we're graduating to 2 per week. Once again, links to that you will find under the video, but I'm sure you know how to use the search tab on iTunes and SoundCloud, and you know the internet, right? I always love when people tweet at me, is your new video up yet? Yes, you can find it on a site called youtube.com, but I don't see it. Then no, it's not up. That's good, Steve. Alienate the viewers right at the end of the video. See you next time. Leafs take on the Sens on Thursday.